do the roundtable discussion on championship wrestling from Florida. We're also going to got questions that fans sent me in. We're going to ask these guys up there, and then after we're done, we'll go to a question and answer from you guys on it. I'm just going to let everybody introduce themselves.
Someone start the timer. Only allocated 20 minutes to introduce myself. That's going to be very difficult. I am Rock Metal. I'm the original Mr. Wonderful of professional wrestling, and this is my life. Live from Florida, so we'll talk. Thank you.
Have you ever known me to do such a small one?
Hi, I'm Mike Rotunda. I had a lot of gimmicks. IRS, Wall Street, Captain Mike, a lot of different tag team partners. Barry Windham and I were a tag team in Florida back in the day, and then we ended up going to work for WWF, so Florida was a great place to work and have fun at the same time.
Joe Malenko, my gimmick is that I had no gimmick, still don't. I pretty much live on the back of my father, who had a hell of a career in Florida for about 10 years, fighting this guy with blonde hair who bled a lot. And then my brother, Dean Malenko, who was somewhat technical and maybe outshone me on rare occasion. Once, actually. Maybe he outshone me once with this Eddie Guerrero stuff. And on that note,
Patterson is my name, and I come through Florida. Everybody that came through Florida knows us talking about wrestling, so it's going to be a good group. The ones that don't know me, none of them.
Yeah.
I have my own. You can just keep it between you guys. You're in charge. That was a mistake. That was a mistake there. All right, first I want to just start off with, what I did was I put it on my Facebook for people to give me questions that they wanted to know. I mean, I could have questions to tell you, but I thought, why not let the fans ask the questions? So one of the guys, Bradley, he wrote, he says, though I wasn't alive during the Florida era, I still believe it was the greatest territory of all time. Would you guys agree? Okay. This one was from JJ, but he's not here. So this one is going to go out to whoever wants to answer this one. So a question that I'd like to submit. I have always felt the referees are essential parts of a good match. What clues do the wrestlers give the referees to finish the match? And do they sit down with the referees before the match to set up a finish? And how do the wrestlers know what the count is on when they've got their backs to the referee if they're going to kick out?
80 questions in one, right?
Yeah.
I would encourage the person who wrote that to step in the ring. That's all.
Better yet, become a referee.
I actually refereed in Florida, and not too many people know that. In fact, I've got a picture of me and Jerry Briscoe in the ring. And yeah, what a question. Who asked that? Who the hell asked that? That was Robert Gilman.
Well, I mean, how did you guys know when the match is going, it's yelling and screaming and everything, you know, and the referee's doing the count? How do you know when it's the tap to kick out?
When the referee,
It's confusing. I don't know.
Do people understand we represent old school and you're asking us those kind of questions? Especially you. Thank you.
Not breaking kayfabe.
Oh, okay. What's it like being an icon in the sport? Sorry, Joe.
I don't know why I have to answer that, but you don't really think about stuff like that. I mean, especially when you're wrestling and you're putting your gear on 300 times a year, you just keep going and you do the best you can. You know, it's nothing you really sit there and think about. Some guys obviously do, but in my case, I don't think I ever thought about that.
So I obviously was not that kind, especially in your eyes, Gennard. Lousy bastard. But my dad was. And you know, if you talk to him, he never talked to you about titles, never talked to you about great matches that he had. He just loved the business, he worked it hard, he plied his trade every single night, and that's what you got. I mean, I never remember my dad saying, I won this or I won that, because he knew he was just one of the boys. That was his most endearing trait, and then you have.
It's the love of the business. You know what I mean? Individuals don't have a clue of what's going on, and make all type of allegations or whatever. I mean, when you put them tights on and spend years loving what you do, you know, it just, where we are now, like you said a moment ago, some of the questions now will be, we can't answer them because we wrestled back then. We got some wrestling back then. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Are y'all with me? You know, it's just like the world. Like the world. I mean, it can be better. Did you like the old school? Did you like the old school rap? Basically, when you have a commentator and you have individuals that can wrestle, hey, that's what it's all about.
Cool. Thank you. Since the business was so secretive in the earlier years, this is from Tony. He wanted to know, he was curious about how difficult it was for heels to live and go out shopping, you know, or baby faces when you're going out into the public, just doing your normal activities. What kind of experience did you have with that?
Well, I think that most times people are, you know, respectful. Every once in a while, you know, you don't get that from if you're sitting there eating dinner in a restaurant with your wife or your kids or your family, and somebody comes up. If they're respectful, you know, can sign an autograph for them or whatever. But if they're rude, then you got to let them know that too. So. But in most cases, people are respectful. It's a different ballgame when you went into an arena and they're cussing at you and throwing stuff at you, but that's your job. So if they were doing that and you were a heel, then you were doing your job well.
A lot of places I went, including Pensacola, Florida, they would send it in tapes ahead of time, so by the time I got there, people hated my guts, which was wonderful. And good job. That's why I had death threats. 3 times people shot at me. Why I chased people, took knives away from people who pulled knives and chased them into a hostile crowd and then disciplined them. But I remember stopping, just a very short story. Give me 20 minutes. When I was in Pensacola, I stopped at a service station, and this is back when there was something called street maps and state maps. Before, anyway. Anybody else old enough to remember paper maps? Wow. Good. I'm starting to think I'm getting old. I'm 49 years old now, July 12, 1973. Anyhow, I stopped in there, they had the Thomas Brothers Guide, the big Thomas Brothers, expensive when you buy them, even then, $30, $40, I think. But this man said, I said, how do I get from here to here, and do you have a map? He says, I don't have any maps for sale, I've got the Thomas Brothers guy, and he handed it to me, and he says, take it. And what the whole purpose of this was, his life changed just from that. It wasn't like something, we have the ability to touch people. And this person was so amazed that this character, this person, this professional wrestler, bigger than life, is now at his station, and he was able now to talk about that. If he's still alive, I'll bet you anything, he still refers to that, talks about that. And it's amazing how we touch people. Anyway.
Okay. Good. What is the most important bit of knowledge that somebody gave you when you first broke into the business or when you were training?
I would say you treat the business as a shoot, you know, and that's how you work, and you have to be physical in there to do it, and to make people believers of what you're doing. And that was advice I got from Dick Byer, the Destroyer. And save your money, it's not what you make. It's not what you spend, it's what you make and save.
Well, the greatest thing for me, because of who my dad was and what he taught me as a kid, he said the first thing out of the gate was make sure you got a backup. So I went to pharmacy school, and then was able to apply my trade a little bit in the range, especially over Japan. But I always made sure that I was protecting my livelihood, which was much more than wrestling at the time, because I saw so many guys who went through the business and at the end of it all they had nothing to show for it. It was always sad. So. I knew from the very beginning to make sure I would shore it up with other things, but if I had been in wrestling, I would have done the same thing in wrestling. I would have made sure that I kind of took care of things as I went along and not kind of crazy about dropping money every which way. I wouldn't have been in the bars, buying everybody drinks. Also, I'm Jewish and I'm cheap.
That's not new to us.
Everything that they say is true. You got to take care of that money while you're making it. Because if you ain't got no money, you can't do nothing. Understand that. And it's a good life. Big money don't last forever. You got to be smart because you get old. I'm older than almost everybody up here to put together. You see, we're near.
And prettier than us all.
But understanding me. God took care of me all these years. I've had everything that I wanted. So I missed a lot of wrestling, but I haven't missed anything else. Because God kept me providing for me money to do whatever I need to do. So, but you have to, in life, what he told you, it ain't what you make, what you hold on to. Take care of yourself and yours. Wrestling is one of the best things in the world. And wrestling has some of the best fans in the world. That's the reason we need to be backstage. My whole thing was about getting wrestling back to the point where the individuals that I come through maybe with would be proud of today. Some things don't change. And I mean, fighting or wrestling or boxing or whatever, that don't change. You got to be real and do what you do, or it ain't gonna be, and they ain't gonna be satisfied with it. Why do you all say all the time, We want the old school back. But you won't feel the dance, you won't feel no way. They done some things that incredible. Am I right or wrong?
Right.
Talk to me.
Words of wisdom that were shared with me, 3 words. Enjoy the journey. That I would like to share with you. It's not a destination, it's enjoying the journey. Every day above ground is a wonderful, good day. And it's another opportunity to make a difference in other people's lives. Hopefully one of us, or many of us, will say things that will influence you and change your lives for the better and give you hope, give you incentive. Yes, you can have it all. That's it.
All right, well, this one's from Gene. He was wondering if it was pretty easy to travel the territory, Florida versus other states.
Yeah, because you got home every night. Back in those days, if you were in, most guys lived in Tampa, you know, you could drive to West Palm or Miami or Jacksonville or some spot shows, Orlando, and you got home every night. I worked for WWE for quite a while, and there you were never home. I mean, you would go, when Barry and I first went there, we were doing probably 30, 35 days in a row on the road. We would get maybe 3 days off, and then you'd go hit another 30 days in a row. So it was definitely better. I mean, easier, even though you put a lot of miles in, you got home every night and had more of a normal life doing that. So.
Yes.
Absolutely right.
Okay, this comes from Brian, and Brian Westcott, who we have here in the audience. And his question was, did the impact of the suicide of Eddie Graham, what did it do to CWF? What impact was there?
Well, I wasn't there when that happened, but I'm sure it was impactful. I mean, Eddie was beloved by most of the boys and you know, a lot of fans. So it was, I don't know, a sad story with the Grants all the way around. So I'm sure it did, you know, it was impactful, but it's part of life, and unfortunately it ended for them like that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the business goes, obviously, Eddie was a brand beyond the business. He was had a hell of a mind for the business. It was already sort of on a downward trend by the time that happened. But it wasn't so much the impact on, you know, on the fans or the business. It was the impact on his personal, you know, on his personal life, his family, even to this day, his granddaughter. So, you know, a terrible legacy for family, and it was obviously in a hell of a lot of pain. I knew Mike real well back from the time we were kids. He hated me, I hated him. but we actually got along. And towards the latter part of his life, we got along pretty well. And it was just, you know, it wasn't a matter of the business at that point. It was a matter of, you know, this is a family that just suffers so much freaking pain, and hard to even grasp. So hopefully, we've got a little bit more aware of mental health issues. It's a big thing roaming around right now, right? Besides some other things that I don't understand.
I don't understand it. I don't know nothing about it. That all I can understand is that it's such a waste, because there's a lot, Eddie had a lot of knowledge to business. That's the only way I can look at it.
Just start with the other folks still on this one, and we'll come this way. Who was your toughest match for you in your favorite wrestlers to wrestle?
It's a lot of bad men, tough men in the wrestling. You know, any given day, any man can whoop any good man can whoop it. And then I had the opportunity to come along with the greatest. the Luther thing, I mean, all of the guys. I mean, I'm talking about his dad. Whoa. Yeah, man, let me tell you. I mean, it's just deep. It's deep. When you're talking about wrestling, there's some individual that is born to wrestle. You understand what I'm saying? And it's real now. You know, and it just takes different special kind of individuals. I mean, like I spent a lot of time with his dad. A lot of time. One of the great workers in the area. But hey, man, I get full when I talk about this wrestling. Because I had the opportunity to touch some of the greatest individuals in this business that can rap. And it's all about wrestling. Wrestling is a little showmanship. But it's all about making you happy. Because we're going to be happy when we do what we do. You understand? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm so full, I'm about to bust.
This is a new shirt, don't get anything on.
Excuse me.
So, yeah, I had a strange and unusual career, mostly an abbreviated career. I did a bunch of different things besides the wrestling business, and most of what I did was in Japan. What I did in Florida was, actually, most people don't even know that Barry Rhodes, who's somewhat of a historian, I guess, he sent me a bunch of pictures. Because I used to referee back in the day when I was in high school. Got pictures of me, 17, 18 years old, refereeing Jerry Briscoe when we didn't like each other. This seems to be a theme that there were a lot of people that didn't like me, I didn't like them. But we've all grown to love one another. And you know, when you asked me about toughest opponents and stuff, we were training a lot of guys in Florida at the time, and then running some independent stuff, actually running some opposition stuff. And it was the guys that I was training now. Glenn Jacobs, for example, was one of the guys we had, and Glenn's. I'm in the ring with him. We're going at it. It's submission style stuff, so we're going at it. And I'm trying to move him around. He was a big, strong kid. And I'll always remember climbing out of the ring. And I started to walk away, and I turned back to him. I said, "How big are you?" And he said, 6'6", 6'6", 6'7". He was 305, 315, or something like that. I'm like, holy shit! No wonder why you were hard to move around. Tough guy. And then of course he went on to do some neat things. Personally, outside the state of Florida, probably the number one guy that I point to is Dynamite, because Tom was just freaking. Even as I caught him at the end of his career, where he didn't have a lot of the tools that he once had when he had the Tiger Mask kind of stuff going on, it was just earth-shaking, game-changing kind of matches. He was amazing. And then Stan Hansen, who just pretty much just destroyed me. He quits out. And now I'm gonna So I get in the ring with Stan. Stan grabs the ring bell, he hits me with the ring bell. Throws me out of the ring, hits me with a chair. Throws me into the post of the ring, throws me back in the ring, drops a couple elbows on. I mean, he just goes. So later on, I said, Stan, you destroyed me out there. He goes, well, you should have fought back.
CWF, and this can be anybody who can answer this one. When you ran a big town, were you also running a small town the same night? You're doing 2 territories? Okay.
Charlotte, way back in WWE did. At one time, WWE probably had.
At one time, WWE probably had 5 towns running the same night. Charlotte, also NWA would have 2 crews, so they would run 2 shows a night. It just depended on, your scheduling, if you'd be at this show or that show. I'm not too familiar with a bunch of the other territories because I basically worked Florida, Charlotte, WWE, and WCW. But yeah, it did happen in business when there were hot times. Especially, I remember I was kind of there at the start of WWE, and I mean they would throw up 4 towns, and it was crazy, and they were all selling out. But you still hoped you were on Hogan's, because that would be the biggest, you know, arena and the best payoff if you were on those shows.
I had a quick question for you, Mike. Do you think that was because George Scott came into WWE as the booker, and he was used to running to multiple towns and gave Vince the idea? Do you think that was?
I'm sure it was.
Yeah. Right. Just curious.
All right, if you guys wrestle the same person for the whole week, do you guys use the same finishes every night?
Not necessarily.
No.
Why do you think more wrestlers today are getting hurt versus back in the days?
Because they don't know how to work. They don't understand psychology. They don't understand how to tell a story. So much is lost in this business right now.
Yeah, I think, you know, with some of the crazy stuff that the guys are doing, I mean, they're doing flips off the top of a cage 40 feet in the air, and you're going to get injured doing that. We kept it ground and pound with us, and, you know, learned how to work a match, and like everybody says, psychology was the biggest thing, because you could, some great workers, I'll give you an example, Randy Orton is a great worker. He doesn't waste a step. Everything means something when he's moving in the ring and working, and he doesn't need to jump off the top rope and risk getting hurt like that.
So the athleticism is unquestioned. You know, just make sure you understand that nobody up here is saying that these guys aren't great at what they do. They're just different than we are used to. And part of what I understood from the very beginning was, you know, this is about longevity, and I don't get longevity if I destroy my body night one. If I'm doing double backflips with a corkscrew, and I expect to do that on a regular basis, I'm an idiot.
Piper told me when I first met him, he goes, I came back from the ring in a match, and I think I did a drop kick off the top rope, and he pulled me aside and said, don't ever do anything in front of a promoter that you don't want to do again, because if they see you doing that, you're going to end up doing it every night, and you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, we part of the problem as I see it, and you know, it's a problem, and it's just something that happened. I think we took a lot of the things that in the days were the finishes that, you know, were clearly defined. People saw you do what you did, and they went, okay, the match is over. You bested your opponent. But you know, the business has destroyed so much of that now, in order to get to the end of the match, you have to do what most people did: one shot, one time. You know, maybe once a night, but probably once every few nights. It's just we've bastardized, or we haven't, but you know, the business has sort of bastardized itself. And how do you got kids now, you know, they're in their 30s, early 40s, and they're done, you know, breaking their necks, and they're just done. There's no need for that. You don't have to do that. So that's the rough part, is somebody actually hurting themselves to the point where now they can't make a living. They don't have a livelihood anymore.
Who was your favorite hero in the business growing up?
The great Boris Maximilianovich Malenko.
He's a hero. That's why I feel so good sitting here.
I wrestled as a babyface for about 5 years, and then became a heel after that. And you know, the guys tell them, watch everybody and steal a little bit from each guy to make your own deal. But I really liked, from the first time I saw him, Don Morocco. I thought he was great.
Yeah, this is one of these questions where there's just too many to answer. Oh, look, obviously my dad was my dad, so I've got to point to it was my pop. I got to point to my pop as being, you know, the ultimate hero, as the ultimate heel, both in and out of the ring. But, you know, there are so many guys. Terry Funk, for one. I mean, I'd love to watch it. The funny thing about Terry is we were in a small gym in Japan one time. He came up to me, he goes, I want to let you know that everything I did in my life, I patterned after your dad. You know, from the time that he got on the mic and he talked to what he did in the ring. And so it was kind of funny because he was one of my heroes, you know, one of the guys I looked up to, and he actually looked up to my dad, which was kind of neat. But there's so many people. Wally McDaniels, for example, I always thought the world of Wally McDaniels. And you know what really differentiated a lot of these guys was the the intensity that they had in the ring was what set them apart. We were talking about Wahoo the other day. You know, he grabbed that, you know, towards whatever part of the match when it was ready. He'd grab that hair and he'd do that freaking war dance around the guy, and he'd throw that chop to the head, and everybody in that freaking arena would flinch because it was as believable as it gets. Especially the guy who took the chop. It was believable. It was as believable as it gets.
Difficult. It's difficult because like I said before, I started at a time when I had the opportunity to touch all of the good. God, old man's funk, your dad. It's just unreal. It's unreal. It's you left. You fans. This is all for you. A lot of great guys out there. Different types of stuff. But it all comes down to one thing. Is wrestling and what you come back to. Saying something great that you can respect. And something that you believe in. Something that just don't seem to be dumb. No dumb things. Oh, hey, you're gonna hurt yourself. So
okay.
That's all I
did forget to say one thing real quick. So when Mike got into business, he got into business when you were in Florida. And so I need to say that when you got into business because of your background with Syracuse and being legit at the time, yeah, you were one of those guys that I looked and I'm like, oh, that's Mike Rotunda. I used to watch Brian Blair when I was a kid.
Wait a minute, he just told you he was born, he was, got into business in 1956. I wasn't even born yet. But anyway, my favorite wrestler, hero, turned out to be one of my greatest friends of all time. It's Jack Briscoe.
This is just one question to answer. Do you guys still watch wrestling today on TV?
Yes.
Is there wrestling on TV now? By the way, the person who was the most influential person in my life ever, Rip Hogg.
Rip Hall?
Rip Hogg. Rip the Profile Hogg. If you don't know who that is, see, next year, I will have my own block of time, probably something short, like 7-8 hours, and I can tell you some of those stories of Rip Hogg, for example. And what was this question, sir?
He already answered it.
You did? Yeah.
Yes. No, that was the, you watch wrestling today. Sorry. That went over. Okay.
No, I don't, since my kids aren't with WWE anymore. I haven't watched it in about 2 years.
So my brother started with AEW, and he started with AEW, and I tuned in, but I didn't watch it. I just recorded the very first AEW. And then a couple weeks later, my brother says, "Hey, did you see the show?" And I went, "No." He goes, "Oh, well, that's freaking nice. My own brother doesn't watch my show." I'm like, "Okay." So I watched the recording, and then he called me back 3 days later. He goes, "Watch it." I said, "Yeah, I watched it." He said, "Well," I said, "I didn't like it," and then he got all pissed off at me. But that was the last show I watched.
I don't watch it. I don't watch it.
All right, let's, since we're running out of time, your funniest story on the road. No, I would do want to say one thing. If you ever want to know a stalker, that would be Brian here when he stalked Jack Briscoe in Zales.
Funniest road story?
One of the stories, we used to go through Yeehaw Junction to get to Miami, and Yeehaw Junction is like a back road where you would literally drive down there and there'd be rattlesnakes on the road or gators or whatever. And at Yeehaw Junction, there was these 2 mules in a field, and Dusty and Blackjack Mulligan are on their way back, and we were behind them. So they get out and they decide they're going to ride these mules after we wrestled that night in Miami. So they go out in this field and they're trying to, get a hold close enough to jump on the mules. And one of them turns around and bucks his backhand and hits Blackjack right in the chest, knocked him flat. Boom, he went down. And that was the end of the mule riding for that night. And he had hoof prints in his chest for about a month. So they didn't stop at Yeehaw to ride mules anymore after that.
Man, so many freaking stories. Give this to Brian. Brian's probably got the best one. No, he's got
Well, speaking of...
I used to watch Brian when I was a kid too. I watched him on television, and I said, "That guy's really good, but when I grow up, I bet I could be as good, and I'm going to grow up and beat him sometime." Good. Keep growing.
Give us a story, Brian.
Sure. Since Mike brought up Yeehaw Junction, when I was breaking into business, it was very difficult in the dungeon. But Pat Patterson used to come around and start teasing me and say, "Hey, I need to get in the ring with you and show you how to do some switches and go behinds and things like that." And I said, "No, I really appreciate that, Pat." And later on, we became the best of friends. But the Briscoes, I was fortunate enough to be riding with Jack and Gerald in the Lincoln Versailles. And it's all in my book, Truth Be Told. Anyway, in my Lincoln Versailles. And Gerald's Lincoln Versailles. And anyway, we're about, I don't know, it's probably between West Palm and Yeehaw Junction is what, 100 and some miles? Yeah, 100 miles. So we're about 50 miles that night, coming from West Palm Beach. All of a sudden, there's a gold Lincoln Continental, and the horn goes blasting, and I look over to the right, we look over to the right, and there's a booty sticking out of the moonroof, and it's Louis Dondero, who was Pat Patterson's partner. And Pat's driving the car, and Frankie Kane's in there as well, the Great Mephisto. You guys remember the Great Mephisto? Yeah. So anyway, I can't believe that they did that, and the Briscoes start going, "God dang, Beaver, those guys are always messing with you, man. We gotta stop this. This can't happen anymore." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. What can we do?" And so Jack and Jerry are talking, all of a sudden they said, "We're gonna pull over to the side of the road when they pass us up. We'll wait till we get a little closer to Yeehaw Junction. They'll pass us up. We'll stop like we're peeing, and you jump in the back of the trunk and boot them. And when we get to Yeehaw Junction, we'll wait for the toll, because it's dark, there's not going to be a whole lot of people around." I said, "That's perfect. That's like perfect rib." So passes up. I jump in the trunk. I got my pants to my ankle, could barely get in the trunk like that, but I finally got in the trunk in position to where my butt's facing the back and everything. And they got the music turned way up. Yeah, rock and roll. Hey, can you breathe okay? I can breathe. All of a sudden I hear the car stop. I feel the car stop, and they're talking louder. Hey, hold on, they're peeing now. The car takes off again. Oh, okay, wait a minute, they're right behind us. And so I'm ready to moon Pat Patterson and the guys for all the time messing with me. And moon them good, okay. On the count of 3, they're right behind us. There's nobody here, we're right at Stuckey's. I hear the count, 1, 2, 3. They pop, Joe pops the trunk pops open. I shake my butt. I turn around to see those guys laughing, and they had backed into the picture window of the Stuckey's restaurant. And it was full of people. I mean, and it goes on. The next day, Gordon Sully, God bless him, greatest announcer of all time, Gordon Sully says the people at Yeehaw Junction would like to thank Brian Blair for his public appearance.
So I'm a small town in Florida, I can't remember what town it was, and I was refereeing at the time, and Mike Graham, who Mike and I, again, went way back to when we were kids, 12, 13, and he comes up to me and he's trying to tell me about his match a little bit, and I said, Mike, I just want to let you know, man, it's a freaking honor. And I straight faced, it's a freaking honor to referee your match tonight. And you just see Mike kind of puff up a little bit. And I said, yeah, I just, in all my life, I've never had the opportunity to referee a midget match. You know the word of me saying that got up to Charlotte like a week later. People were saying, I heard what you said to Grant. That was good. That's all that.
My stories take too much time, some other time.
All right, I'm gonna come out here. You guys got questions for anybody up there? Raise your hand who's got the first question. Okay.
I don't even need that thing in here. Mr. Rotunda, I watch your kids wrestle. Your younger one. Yeah, he was kind of goofier. But what made your kids not honor you by using the Rotunda name?
Well, it wasn't their choice. You worked for WWE. WWE wouldn't let, whenever they started, they wouldn't let them use like their real names because then they couldn't trademark. So they basically give you the character what they want out of it. You know, they name you. It's kind of like being in prison because you don't have a lot of free choice of what you want to do. Like all their stuff, they would build them up and beat them. Build them up and beat them. And it's just a lot of stuff they didn't make any sense. Yeah. And that's the reason they couldn't use their real names.
This is actually 3 separate questions, and any of you can answer them. Thoughts on Vince McMahon retiring, and do you have any stories involving Haku or Jim Cornette?
Of who was Jim Cornette?
Haku.
Haku?
Yeah.
I'll give you a story on Vince McMahon retiring. WWE is a publicly traded corporation, and whenever there's turmoil within a board and things are distracting from the corporation, it's always best to step down until things are straightened out or until whether Vince decides to come back or not. But you can bet your last dollar that before any direction changes have taken place from here forward, that Vince is going to know about it and have his hand on it. But it's good. I mean, he's 77. There's some stuff going on, and when it's all settled down, I'm sure you'll see Vince around again. That's my opinion.
Okay. Hi. What day was TV tapings in Florida, and how is TV taping different than a regular show?
TV tapings were always on Wednesday. we'd do them on Wednesday, and then we'd have to drive, or if you made enough money, you could fly. A lot of us would charter a plane, or Eddie would have his plane. It went from $50 to $75, and so you'd have to decide whether you wanted to pay, half your payoff for a flight, or drive 350 miles each way. But TV was at 11 o'clock on Wednesday mornings, every week.
Well, you guys were traveling all over Florida. Was there like a particular city you enjoyed more than the others?
I like Tampa because you're home.
Yeah, so two things. One is that we always talk about Tampa because Tampa was Fort Homer Hesley Armory, and it had the moniker of Madison Square Garden in the South. And to put people in the seats in a place that was 140 degrees in the shade, where everybody smoked cigarettes and you couldn't even see, the person in front of you. To make that happen, to sell them out, and even have a couple thousand people outside just listening, that's amazing. My favorite city, I love Miami Beach. My dad used to make fun of the fact that was his town, but Miami Beach was amazing because you had the Miami Beach Convention Center. It was Christian Angelo Dundee. You got the Ali connection at the time. They used to have the Miss Universe contest there on occasion, so my dad got to kind of be front and center with some of the Miss Universe folks. In fact, he disappeared for a few nights, and then I didn't say that out loud. And then you had the Jackie Gleason show, which was done next door. And I was pointing the fact that my dad had a skit with Gleason one time, which we're still looking for the tape. It's out there somewhere in the nether regions of the world. It should be. It's not tough call.
I don't know. There's a lot of matches that you face. Like when I was in Florida, I hadn't been in the business very long, and I was doing 60-minute matches with Ric Flair, which he was used to doing every night because he was a champion and he traveled around. So it was an experience for me, just having to go that long, non-stop, and end up, with 60 minutes under your belt in the same match. So that was pretty tough. And I was a sweater, and I would drop literally like 20, 25 pounds in an hour wrestling Flair. So it was a good time to drink beer afterward, but also some Gatorade.
I'm so fortunate because I think of all of the major stars, all of the legends in this business, and there are very few whom I did not have the opportunity to wrestle. And you notice I'm so old school, I'm not going to say work with. And the person oh my gosh, I worked with Lou Thez. I wrestled Lou Thez. That was so great. I was in the ring with some of the toughest guys ever because of the respect I have for the business and for them. Those were all wonderful matches. Pat Patterson, a couple of years ago, introduced me to some people in the business whom I did not know. He gave me an award at CAC, that's caulifloweralleyclub.org, caulifloweralleyclub.org. He has become a lifetime member here and there.
That's a $25 fee per announcement.
Yes, it comes from him. And plus I'm charging a fee for being his mouthpiece here. But Pat Patterson said, this is Rock Riddle, the original Mr. Wonderful of professional wrestling. I had some of the best matches of my career with this man. It was the greatest compliment I had ever received in my life. And he didn't just say it once. My favorite wrestler, the person with whom to wrestle with was Pat Patterson. And I knew when I drove to a town and I saw a poster, because we never knew ahead of time. We just got a booking slip once a week and it would say the date and the name of the town. It doesn't even say the building, and certainly you never know your opponent, or not through my experience. When I would see a poster that says Rock Riddle versus Lou Thez, I would say, okay, I'm not going to eat before the match. I would see Rock Riddle versus Pat Patterson, said, okay, I'm really hungry, I can get something now before the match. And those were 45-minute matches a lot of times. And then one of the two of us who was not a little bit crazier we'd a lot of times say 15 more minutes, and we'd get 15 more minutes, so we would have the opportunity to do an hour. I never heard of anyone losing more than 17 pounds in a match, so I am in awe. Wow, that's great.
Well, first off, thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm sorry I'm a little late. But Rock, you were supposed to say I was the toughest opponent you ever wrestled.
The toughest person I was ever scheduled to wrestle backed out. I called him a coward in front of all of his peers, and they held him back. But I have now challenged him because he's had how many surgeries on that back. So I want you to say to these people right now, Rock Riddle, I backed out of the last one, but I am definitively agreeing that I will that I will go into the ring with you one more time. Everyone's a witness. Just assume he just said it.
Well, looking at the talent at this table, Rock, in my condition, if I had to choose an opponent at this table, it would definitely be you. A lot of people, well, let me just say something. These guys don't brag or anything, so they're very humble people. But, you know, Rock's an amazing talent. He's done a lot of Hollywood stuff and continues to do that. Thunderbolt Patterson was so wonderfully nice to me when I was a rookie, and I will never forget that. And I actually put that in my book, Truth Be Told. Truth Be Told, it's available on Amazon. Jody Simon had a tremendous career in Japan, and he's considered to be one of the premier hookers. He was a pupil of Carl Gotch's for many, many years, and Carl came in, he came into this moratorium, and he turned every which way but loose. And of course, Jody's like a chip off both his dad and Carl. He's a combination of both. And he's his own man, but he's a tough guy. Of course, Mike Rotunda's outstanding amateur wrestler, Syracuse man, and just a super guy. But don't ever cross him, because it'll be the last time you hit. My toughest opponent, I would say, is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, both inside the ring and outside the ring. I've been with Paul, probably the only person that I've been with in more. I've wrestled in over 50 countries, or I'm sorry, over 40 countries. I've been in 50 countries. Wrestled in over 40 countries, and the person that I was in different places the most was either Bam Bam Bigelow or Paul Orndorff. Again, both of them tough guys, but Paul was so tough and so mean. He was raised in the chicken coop, converted chicken coop, and I think during his day, during his prime, that there was none of the boys that could kick his butt. Him and Haku would have been a tough fight for sure, and I love Fafita. He's a great friend. But Paul was truly an animal. I've seen people start fights with him. There's some legendary fights with him and Tony Atlas, and also Big Van Vader. But he was a tough opponent. What was the second half of that question? I like to wrestle Paul. Even though I get my butt kicked, I knew that the people would enjoy the match, because it was always knockdown, drag out.
Thank you. The next one isn't a question, it was a little bit of trivia from Bruce Owens. He said, one of the investment reasons that Eddie Graham bought into championship wrestling from Florida in the territory was because it was surrounded by water. So the only person that could invade would have to invade from Georgia area. And since he knew Paul Jones and Barnett, he knew they weren't going to invade. So he didn't have to worry about anybody else coming in his territory. That's just a little bit of trivia for y'all. This is from B. James. He says, I truly miss the days of the territories. I know times have changed and things progress. He said, but I'd like to hear the thoughts on do they think that we've lost something as things are now going to laser light shows, multi-million-dollar productions. It says, I guess many of us feel like we have lost what it was all about, as what it is about has changed. The storytelling has given way to high spot glory. Would you be interested in hearing their thoughts on that?
What's the bottom line question in here?
Yeah. Let mine answer.
I'm sorry. Okay, 2 minutes. I hate to be microphone. I think the guys are so talented nowadays. They're great. They're great athletes, but it was a lot different then. Now it's more scripted, and back then you knew basically who was going to win, who was going to lose. That was it. And you go into the ring, and you wrestle in Tampa, Florida, or Tupelo, Mississippi, or Sacramento, California, or wherever you wrestle. The fans are different. They might enjoy just catch can, chain wrestling or whatever. In other places, you got to pull out a hammer and hit somebody over the head with a hammer and get an arousal. It just depends. But the main thing is we had psychology. We had a lot more psychology than I think because we were forced to. There was nobody telling us, what to do, how to do it, what you wanted to say in your interviews. So I think it was a lot more organic than what you see today. That makes sense.
Territory days were wonderful, and it's really unfortunate that had to die. Hopefully it can come back. People allegedly, Vince McMahon, when Dusty Rhodes was alive, allegedly Vince McMahon, when the ratings were not doing well and they were having some challenges, went into the office and he asked Dusty, he says, Dusty, we've done everything, what do we do? What can we do? And Dusty said, have you ever considered going back to wrestling? I was at Dusty's funeral, 700 of his best friends there. Wow. Do you miss this man? Oh, as much as we do. Wow. Think about the people who are gone. We've lost something. Take a look at some of the newer wrestlers. It's totally different. I hesitate to say things and take up time here, but unless you've actually been in the ring, unless you've lived during that time, it's really difficult to express to you what it was, how it was, but it's family. See, I'm not humbled easily. I'm humbled by being up here with these people. This is amazing to me. To be a part of this business, to have the history that I have, to have friends that I have, that's my family. So, not that I would ever get emotional about it.
Yeah, I think that all the points are correct, what the guys already made. I think the biggest thing that's changed, for instance, Barry Windham and I were a tag team in Florida, and we would wrestle probably 35, 40 minutes every night, as opposed, because there was only like 5 matches on a card, as opposed to having 10 matches on a card where everybody goes like 10 minutes, and longer for the main events. But you had to learn your craft to go 40 minutes, because you'd get stunk out of the joint if you didn't, So I think that was the biggest difference. Now the TV matches are like 4 or 5 minutes, and then you go to a commercial, you might have 2 segments. It's not enough time to tell a story, and a lot of guys don't know that just because they've never had the opportunity to spend 40 minutes in front of a crowd. So I think that's one of the biggest changes. You were forced to learn your craft back then.
So I got into the business in 1956. I got into business in 1956. And I'm not a hooker, by the way, even though Brian tends to point to the fact that I'm a hooker.
I thought he said hooker.
He did say hooker. So if anybody comes up and tries to give me 20 bucks later on, I'm not a hooker. We'll take it. But then 20 bucks is 20 bucks. There's a t-shirt that says that, right? So a couple good things about the territory days. One is, it was a camaraderie. You're on the road, and you're on the road pretty consistently with a group of guys. You're with them more than you are with your family, and it is nonstop. You know, in Charlotte, we had like a 700 mile, I think it was 700 or 800 mile loop. So we'd all climb in the car. So, you know, we'd all ride together. So myself, Dino Bravo, Johnny Eagle, Tim Woods at the time. We'd all be in the car. I drove a lot with Angelo Poffo because he was 2 cents a mile back then. He was the cheapest guy in the territory. And there was just a camaraderie that happened off of that. That was pretty amazing. And then, of course, you know, you grabbed your beer on the way home because that was the way you kept your weight on. So you grabbed your beer on the way home, so you were drinking and driving, you know, 4, 5, 6 hours or whatever. It was just a great time. But the other piece of it too was, the important piece, the economic piece was, if your flame burned down in that particular territory, you had multiple other, as long as you were a good hand, you had multiple other places to go. So, you know, my dad worked in Florida, and boom, he was on over to St. Joe, Missouri for a while. He was up in Minneapolis with Vern and Carl Gotch. We went on out to San Francisco. We worked for Roy Shires at the time. Then, then shifted on down to Texas. We were in Texas for a while. I always tell people I was like an army brat because we were constantly traveling. I told somebody the other day, you know, now everybody wants to wear seatbelts, but I used to go to sleep at the top of the car, right underneath the rear window, where there was that ledge. And if my dad had stopped short, I would have been a projectile. I would have been a missile at the front. But then he had 2 kids, so he didn't care. You know, if one was gone. he did like Dean better. So, and I'm getting like you, aren't I? So the great thing about it afforded a lot more opportunities for the boys to go from place to place. You know, they had a lot more options. You know, to go around the country and make some money and keep the continuity of the business running for them personally and individually, and to get a chance to be to be messed over by promoters around the country. That's another story for another day.
Sometimes I get lost for words because I don't know what to say. I was in that era when everybody was talking about the big bubble coming out. And that was all of the promoters were afraid of the superstations taking over. And the guys couldn't go from place to place to place. But you always have somewhere to work. And when the controlling factor wanted to tell you where the team can go. But we're great in the work, one tip. And at that time, all of the territory was on fire. All of it. All of it. Very seldom was they going up and down. Up and down. They were all right. Every territory in the country was doing well. Then the big bubble comes up, which is a big idea. 1 or 2 men can't have a mind for the world. It's like the rest of the business. The rest of the business is one of the greatest businesses in the world. And then it's just, they say the apple don't fall too far from the tree, right? So you got goofy folks running from goofy things, doing goofy things. What's going to happen? The proof's in the pudding. And they say, let's make this, excuse me, let's make this jump right deal. It's all about wrestling. It's all about the fans. And the most of it is about having fun and enjoying yourself and bringing people together and having a good time.
Okay, who's the strangest person that you shared a locker room with?
Strangest person. Yeah, I mean, we're all strangers. We're all pretty much. Come on, to do this business, you got to be a little bit off to the left of center, right? Yeah. I mean, the characters. It's amazing. The funniest thing about our business is the nicknames. And I would every once in a while I would catch myself. So I'd be at home talking about the Japan tour, and there was Steve Williams, who was Doc, and then there was Terry and Gordy, who was Bam Bam. So I'd be talking about the guys on the tour. I'd be like, yeah, Doc and Bam Bam. My kids would look at me like, what are you, a freaking cartoon or something? And then Doug Furness, who was one of my best friends in the business, Doug said I was a small guy, so he called me Sky Lolo. So for the longest time, no, forever, for the rest of my life until he passed, he called me Sky. So I would be working pharmacy, he'd call the pharmacy, and he'd ask for the front counter, he'd say, hey, I need to speak with Sky. So the person at the front counter would call back to the pharmacy saying, there's some guy on the phone looking for a Sky Lolo. Oh my God. Anyway, strange and unusual things.
Okay, so instead of your favorite match, what was your favorite match you guys watched that made your mouth drop? Or even though you're in business, is there anything that really made you guys think, wow, hold on to this?
Can you repeat that question?
I like the Undertaker and the cage match with Mick Foley and Undertaker and Mick Foley.
Microphone.
Personally, I mean, there's a lot of them, but one of the more modern day ones was Undertaker and Mick Foley in the cage match when Foley went through the cage. You guys all remember that?
Yeah.
What's that?
That was the first ever Hell in a Cell. The second.
Yeah, the Hell in a Cell match. That was a very interesting match to me.
What was the question? Favorite match you think
That you watched.
oh, that you back in the day, whatever, on TV, whatever.
Well, mine's different from everybody else, and it may not. I got no reaction or very little when I said Rip Hog. Rip Hog was a major player he booked out of Charlotte or Crockett, etc. I really the most influential match I ever watched. My introduction to professional wrestling at the age of 14 was watching Rip Hawk and Sweet Hansen on television live. And George Baker and Johnny Weaver. I'll tell that story next year.
I think some of the greatest matches I've ever seen were Barry Windham and Ric Flair.
Yeah.
I'll tell you like it. I don't know what to say. Great. I've seen a lot of great matches years ago. I don't watch it no more.
2 minutes. I mean, obviously Flair and Steamboat in their day. Ricky, I don't know if there was anybody better when he was on. And then, Wallow and Flair. Just the chops alone. Again, I was refereeing many of their matches, and I would move off to the side just to stay clear of those chops. It would literally. Because it happened night after night, it would literally, so Flair's chest would welt up and then the welts would bleed. So anybody who says anything they say, they should take a walk and chop once.
Yeah. Any other questions? Look, I already got you one. You get him.
Thanks for doing this, guys. Specific to Florida, who's someone that came through the territory that lit it on fire and for whatever reason it didn't translate anywhere else? In your experience and the inference, who's someone who wasn't really catching on in Florida, you thought, well, this guy doesn't have a future, and then they just caught fire somewhere else?
A lot of great wrestlers came from Florida.
Yeah.
You definitely have to know your trade to work in that territory. So I don't know. That's a difficult question.
I only spent about a year and a half in Florida, so I didn't get to see, you know, like grow up watching it. You know, over the years you got to see everybody, so it's hard for me. When I was there, we had the Funks there and Ron Bass, and they would bring guys in. You know, like Piper would come down and work for a week. That was educational, right with him. So, it was just a lot of fun, and there was just great talent there, you know. And Dusty was really good at whipping it. And Sullivan was a right-hand man, so it was a fun territory, and you didn't feel like you were working because you loved what you were doing.
So, somebody once told me if you raise the ocean, you raise all ships, and that's sort of what happened in Florida. You just had so much talent that it supported, talent begot talent, and anybody who went in there became better at their craft. So I don't think there was anybody who didn't go out from Florida and have a decent career. There were a couple guys who maybe exceeded expectations. And this isn't to take away from his work in Florida, but Bob Backlund, for example. Bob comes to Florida, and he was who he was in Florida, and obviously he had a fairly significant, amateur background. But then all of a sudden he leaves out of there, he has a nut, and he's a world beater elsewhere. Yeah. But that happened a lot because the Florida territory just cultivated that in guys. You weren't climbing in, you weren't climbing in the ring at any given time with a slot. You were climbing in the ring with the best guys in the world at the time. It really was a hotbed.
On the job training.
Yeah, every night.
I have one question. Why did Barry never get the title?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I can't answer that. Political politics.
Yeah, but he was worth the title.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys. Our time is up.
These guys put their bodies through so much to entertain us.
It's just so important that they're hearing all this from you guys, because they've done it all and they're the men.
Thank you. Help me out.
Well, he's still looking up at you. But if you stand up, he'll be.
I look up at pretty much everybody because I'm Scott Lowe.
But thank